Welcome to If It Doesn't Feed You, Don't Water It, a wellness podcast for women of color. My name is Nayamka Robert Smith, and I am your host. Today's topic, straight out the gate, the lie of imposter syndrome. I think this idea of imposter syndrome circulates heavily around women of color, especially when we are one of the few who look like us in certain spaces. And while I understand imposter syndrome and have felt too oftentimes that I maybe wasn't good enough or maybe that my voice didn't matter, honestly, starting this podcast was one of those times where I felt like maybe what I have to say doesn't matter or isn't important. But even though I felt that, the truth is that that's not true. The truth is that that's wrong. And that I have something important to say, and that you have something important to say, and that we all have something important to say. So if you are listening feeling as though you identify a little bit too closely with the idea of imposter syndrome, my goal is that by the end of this episode, you will not. And you will have what I call white mediocre man energy. Now, this is something that I've used as a mental piece of armor for a really long time. When I'm in a space where I feel uncomfortable or I don't know if I belong or if I'm worthy, the thing that I tell myself to get out of that shitty hole, mental hole that puts you in is, what would a mediocre white man do? Or what would a mediocre white man say? There's been a lot of times in my career as an influencer, content creator, brand ambassador, social media educator, whatever you want to call me, I have always negotiated all of my own contracts. To this day, never had a manager. And when asking for money, I genuinely go through the thought process. And when negotiating my fee or my rates, I genuinely go through the thought process of, what would a mediocre white man ask for? Genuinely. I think that, and I act as though I am some white guy. How great does he think that he is? Because I am often amazed at the audacity, but I'm also inspired by the audacity. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing for women of color to be self-important. And I'll tell you why. The other day, I saw this video of Rick Rubin, who is this huge, renowned music producer. He produced Jay-Z 99 Problems, for one. He's done a million other things. And he was saying how he doesn't play instruments. He doesn't know how to read music. And he just goes off of feelings or whatever to do his music productions. And this is one of the most renowned, respected music producers in the game, right? And while a lot of people in the comments were upset or irritated or angry or felt like, how dare he, or have the audacity, I loved it, actually. And it was the type of exact perfect embodiment of the perfect example, like real life example of the energy that I try to embody in my work. Because honestly, even though he doesn't have the technical skills, he has the credentials. Like, he's made incredible pieces of art. And as not only an esthetician, but a Black esthetician, but a woman, I mean, most estheticians are women, but still in the beauty space, or even in the skincare space, I think we're often made to feel like we don't know anything because we're just stupid estheticians who went to stupid beauty school and weren't smart enough to be a nurse or a derm or don't work in the medical field. And what do you know? And you're Black, and most people in the skincare industry, in the aesthetics industry, in the beauty industry are white. Who are you? Why do you matter? Why do you have to say what you have to say? And I've done a lot of things in this industry that are a little audacious, right? Like when I called out scrubs and said that you shouldn't use them on the face, that was not common knowledge at the time. When I said that I hated vitamin C and that we shouldn't use it, or that we should maybe just demote it from importance, that was a crazy thing to say at the time. Even when I made my oil cleansing video and I showed sebaceous filaments coming out of the skin, I had dermatologists telling me that sebaceous filaments were not a thing, that sebaceous filaments are not in their anatomical dermatology textbook, and that they don't exist, and what's really coming out of the skin is that nothing is really coming out of the skin, and that it's just like fuzz or lint or something like that. And now you have dermatologists on TikTok, on Instagram, wherever, talking about sebaceous filaments, when I was accosted for apparently them not being real, or what I was saying not being true. So I absolutely understand what it feels like to be in a space where you feel like your being or your opinions or your ideas are so contrary or don't belong or aren't worthy. I get it tenfold. Again, I dropped out of college. So in the beginning of my career, had a lot of imposter syndrome around the idea that I could be successful. But I knew I could be successful because I had proof of my knowledge, of my skills, of my talents. It just didn't apply well to school, right? It just didn't apply well to college, or it didn't apply at that time, because I was going through a lot of things in my early 20s, abusive relationship, anxiety, depression. It was very difficult for me, but I still knew that I could do it. And part of that reason is because I went to college with people who okay, this is going to sound mean, I don't consider them smart. They were good at school. And I've seen people who other people thought were idiots, maybe even me, succeed at things that they supposedly shouldn't succeed at, right? And I realized very early on that having the audacity and being confident in yourself is literally half the battle. Because there are people dumber than you doing better than you, way more successful. And there are people smarter than you who are overthinking it and aren't. There are people who no one has like the exact set of traits and ideas and talents and experiences and, what they're going through in life. Like no one has that exact recipe and that exact formula. Something I think about often is Michelle Obama was speaking at some conference. I can't remember what it was. And the quote goes, "I've been at this table with all the world leaders. They are not that smart." And she was talking to a group of women of color. And I just adored it because, especially Michelle Obama saying it, right? Because that woman is brilliant, right? Like she went to Harvard Law. She was like Barack's mentor. Like that woman is brilliant. So for her to know that the people in the rooms of these world leaders around her are not that smart, that gave me so much, like that was just so healing, and that gave me so much confidence, but also was very affirming because you've had to have looked around rooms and said, this person is an idiot. How did they get here? And that's the funny thing about the like right-wing backlash against DEI is because any woman of color, person of color, period, but woman of color especially, if they are in a space with anyone else, they are likely one of the most educated people in the space. They're likely the one who has been through the most to get to that part. And if you are that person, you carry all of that with you into the space. Like how dare you feel like an imposter? Like how dare you do that to yourself? You know you worked harder than everybody else in the room. I know you know that because I've been in rooms where I am like, how am I in this room with this person? I remember being at a brand dinner with an influencer who said that she had just been influencing for like 6 months on and off. And I'm there like years in the game. And we're sitting at the same table. I'm not saying that she shouldn't have been there. I'm saying that I dare not have imposter syndrome for being there. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be very clear that I don't think that being like a rookie or a novice or like mediocre is like necessarily a bad thing. I just want us, women of color, to give ourselves more permission to realize that you're better than that and better than them. And you have no reason to feel imposter syndrome. Like, as a woman of color, you come from multiple different worlds. You bring those worlds together. You're doing something that you haven't seen a lot of people before you do. You literally contain universes and multitudes. And that is not even hyperbole. Again, I think of that video of Omarosa sitting on the couch with Bethany, and she was like, you get to sit there and just be so mediocre, and I can't be mediocre. And again, that is also something that gives me strength that I like pull from regularly. Like, maybe you just didn't hear it enough, but I am telling you, you are better than them. Even like as an esthetician and as a dark skin esthetician that treats other dark skin clients, in order to treat dark skin, you have to know more than the average esthetician. Treating darker skin is harder. So I am never in a space with any other esthetician, no matter how wealthy, no matter how many followers, no matter how long that they've been doing aesthetics. I know that my perspective is valuable because of how much work and talent is required to be a Black esthetician that treats Black skin or treats brown skin, because I treat a variety of skin tones, but they're all brown. And that takes more skill. And I'm not afraid to say that takes more skill, because it does. It's a fact. And I would like you to look at your skills and what you've been through and your talents and your experience more objectively, and realize that, like, if a white man could know all that you know, he'd be up here, you know, like he'd be so rich, so wealthy. So like take that richness, take that wealth of knowledge and carry it with you. Another thing is like the idea, you in and of itself being different than those around you is inherently valuable, because again, you have a perspective that other people don't have. Like, if you're trying to solve a problem and they can't solve the problem, simply your perspective, adding it, makes the whole situation better. I just read a Forbes article from Bosma St. John, and she said something really, really cool, in that she thinks of like her presence and her power as like math and science, like it's chemistry, it's biology. When you add an atom to a piece of matter, this is what she says. I mean, it's true, but this is from her. When you add an atom to a piece of matter, it changes. When you take an atom away, it changes. It changes the matter. Therefore, her walking into a space or into the room changes the room. Her presence alone makes the room different and makes the room better. And her presence, and she's well aware that her presence makes things better, that her perspective adds to the collective. And no matter what anyone says, no matter people being rude to you, people telling you otherwise, like, it is fundamentally, factually not true that your perspective isn't valuable. Not true. There's not a ounce of truth to that. And I think another layer of this is maybe a fear of standing out, because standing out can be dangerous. But the truth is that excellence stands out. If you are trying to be great at anything, you are going to stand out. And I think standing out sometimes kind of makes you inherently great. If you walk in and the room shifts based on your presence, you are great. And we need to not be afraid of that excellence and that ability to stand out. I think for me, because I grew up always getting a lot of attention. So I realized that if you are going to have attention on you, you need to make it worth it, right? Like you need to make it worth it for you. You need to make it worth it for other people. Like it has to, like the attention has the power, is a power, right? It has the power to harness attention. You have to do something valuable with it. And knowing that you're valuable in the way that you move makes you stand up straighter, makes you talk better. That wasn't good grammar, but you know what I mean. Makes you stand up straighter, makes you talk better, makes you be more thoughtful, helps you be more eloquent. Like standing in that, I think is very imperative. And the truth is, I want to live in a world where you don't have imposter syndrome. Like I want to live in a world where you get to do all your big, brave, audacious ideas because I believe in you and I believe that those ideas that you have will make the world better, especially as women of color, because we already come from like such a communal background. We already have such a valuable perspective to add to the world. Like I want to see you do it. I need to see you do it. So please replace your imposter syndrome with white man mediocrity audacity. With white man audacity. Like I've held my own in rooms full of CEOs and doctors and millionaires, like, and I had something to add to the conversation. And they were impressed with what I added to the conversation because everything that I am makes me inherently impressive. Everything you are also makes you inherently impressive. And if you find yourself in those rooms as well, you also have something valuable to add that everyone in the room, regardless of their demographic, will also find impressive. And the real hard part is not actually being impressive, it's just believing that you are. But now if we go back to Rick, I think something that really supports his confidence is the fact that he's done it, right? Like he's created, and also just quick small caveat, I decided a long time ago that the compliment of articulate was going to be a compliment for me. I am articulate. I work very hard on my speech and communicating ideas and the way that I talk. I will not let racism take the word articulate from me. I am articulate. I will say thank you anytime anyone says it to me. I just decided that that is true because that is something that I believe about myself. And all those little like nudges and microaggressions that you can experience moving through spaces that are patriarchal and racist, like you have to think of these things and build up these armors in order to get through them. But also, I don't think that I am bullshitting myself. I think that it's true. So you need to have things that you believe that are true as well. And like I said, back to Rick, he has social proof to build up his confidence, right? He has created great pieces of music, regardless of not knowing how to read music or regardless of not knowing how to play an instrument. And I think you need to, if you are experiencing imposter syndrome, go out and do those things that give you the social proof, that make you proud, that things that you can put in your back pocket and remember and wear as armor in order to counter those other negative ideas in order to counter those negative comments and microaggressions that may come towards you. Like you have to do things that force you to believe in yourself. I think I think that's a part of it that sometimes we don't talk about, that you have to do things that reinforce your belief about yourself. So whether it's small things like learning something new and learning it well, or doubling down on, your specific niche, whatever it is, whether you work in tech, if you work in math, science, if you're a teacher, like whatever it is that you do, doubling down and making sure that you are creating an environment that, at least for you, reinforces, again, that what you believe in yourself or what you want to believe in yourself. Because so much of confidence comes from practice and, like it just doesn't come out of thin air. You have to have like tangible proofs of what you're talking about for both the good days and the bad days. Like I can't over exaggerate how important it is to do things that reaffirm your intellect and reaffirm your talent. and to be around people that reaffirm your intellect and reaffirm your talent. I swear, even if it's not around you, you need to go find it. To the point where if you have to move in order to get, like, it is that important for your survival to have that. If you danced when you were a little kid and no longer dance and are feeling down and unsure about yourself, you need to get back into dance. If it is playing the violin, you need to go do that. If it's playing hockey, you need to go do that. Because self-esteem is a feedback loop. We do things, we get positive reinforcement for them, we feel better about ourselves, and then we do more things. Like, self-esteem doesn't exist in like a vacuum. It is incredibly social and it is incredibly communal. And I think that's sometimes where we lie to people and act like it doesn't matter, like the outside world doesn't matter at all. I understand that it does. But again, if I can quote Michelle Obama again, I remember she said, come home, we love you here. Meaning, even if the world that you're interacting with maybe isn't giving you positive feedback, you have to have a home to come back to where you are loved, where you are reinforced. And that home might be like a literal home, like your mom, your family, your husband, your friends, whatever. Or it could be a metaphorical home, a dance class, the track and field, playing football, like whatever it is. Come home to the things that you know build your self-esteem so that you have it when you walk out into the world, and you can have your white man audacity when you walk into the world because you've doubled down on the things that make you great. Also, please remember, what is the statistic? Like, women only apply for a job when they're 100% qualified and men apply when they're like 60% qualified. We have to stop doing this. You know, like, I think being aware is part of the issue, and I've had to really work to actively stop thinking that I have to be 100% qualified for something in order to do it. If you got 60%, you're good enough. Go forth and prosper, babes. You don't have to be perfect. And I think for women of color, perfectionism is killing us. Like, perfectionism is strangling the dear life out of us. Whether it is our hair, our clothes, when we talk, you do not have to be perfect, babes. You do not. And okay, this is another very, very ridiculous tip, but I have started to follow white women who are like shit shows on social media, and it is so healing. It is so healing. And it is like such a good reminder, like, to see like how messy they show up sometimes. And since I've implemented this, I've noticed that there are more Black women doing it too. Show up messy. Show up however you show up. And you do not have to be perfect, and you can walk in unperfect and still you are better than them. I need you to really remember this. If you take anything away from this, please know that you are better than them. You worked harder to get where you are, to be in the same room. Like, don't believe the lie, because it is a lie. Do not believe the lie that you don't belong. And while I still have like a little ways to go to allow myself to show up imperfectly, again, carrying with me the idea of like, what would a mediocre white man do in this situation, has taken me so far and is so helpful. So I really hope that idea, as ridiculous as it is helpful for you. And I think what it's also done is add some levity to some very like serious, heavy situations that we can be in sometimes. It's silly. It's fun. Think of a mediocre white man. Just do what he would do. It's okay. You'll be all right. Thank you for listening to this episode of If It Doesn't Feed You, Don't Water It. I'm your host, Nayamka Roberts-Smith. And if you love this podcast, if you took something away from this episode today, please remember to like it or share it or subscribe or follow, write us a review. Rate this podcast. It really means the world, and I absolutely love chatting with you. I really hope you took something valuable away from this podcast today. We'll see you next time.